So before we start, how many of you know what GDP is? Can you raise your hands? Okay. Well, how many of you could actually explain to me precisely right now what GDP is? Can you still raise your hands? Okay. Great. Great. So, as you might have realized by now, I will be talking to you about GDP and the flows that come with it. But what is GDP? Well, wait, I'll stop you there because I know what you're thinking, but no, I won't be talking about the Great Depression of postgraduate students. No, it's not the topic of my talk. GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product, and basically it's the amount of goods and services that are being produced within national borders over a certain period of time without deducting taxes. Now, what that means is that basically at the end of the day, GDP is really nothing but a measure of money. Now, GDP has several flows for which it has been criticized a lot over the years. Here are a few examples. First of all, every kind of economic activity can make GDP increase or decrease. For instance, if you die, that will make GDP increase. Because you will need to spend a lot of money for, well, not you will be dead, but your family, your parents, your friends will need to spend a lot of money for the coffin and funeral arrangements and so on. And that will make GDP increase. Then, economic growth can have serious consequences on the environment, and GDP does not take into account environmental depletion. Third, voluntary work, self-production, parts of the legal economy and the so-called sharing economy, they are all not factored into GDP either. And last but not least, GDP tells us nothing about income inequality, which means that GDP may well be increasing, but who is getting that extra money? We don't know. Now, the problem with GDP is that GDP has long been used as a measure of welfare, well-being, and success, even though GDP was never intended to measure such things, because GDP is and remains a measure of economic output only. The reason for that being that what is good for the economy need not necessarily be good for society as well. Again, for instance, if you leave this building and have a car accident, I hope you don't, but if you have one, that will make GDP increase, because you will need to spend a lot of money to fix the car and for your medical treatment. But I'm quite sure these are all things we would all prefer to avoid, right? So as Robert Kennedy once said, GDP, he was referring to GDP back then, which is a similar concept to GDP. GDP measures everything in short, except that which makes life worthwhile. Since 1960s, scholars, NGOs, international organizations, and so on, have been trying to develop and promote alternative or complementary measures to GDP. Currently, there are over 300 and counting. Good news. In fact, the majority of them is now either dead or no longer updated. 16 out of 20 of these indices here is basically just useless now. Why is it the case though? Well, the reason is very simple. And the reason is that we're so focused on what? So focused on GDP. And economic growth seems to be the only thing we look at in terms of public debate. However, we need to look beyond it for our societies to prosper. But why, you may wonder? Well, let's go back to our first slide. Remember the one about the flows of GDP. Now think of the main challenges we're facing in the 21st century. Climate change and income inequality are two big issues, and not just fancy hashtags or fake news. They're real. And yet, to tackle these challenges, we need to challenge ourselves and change the way we look at things, and the things we look at. Because looking only at GDP is forcing us to underestimate exactly those problems we've seen before. We therefore need to change the way we evaluate policies and the way we hold our politicians accountable for what they have done or haven't done to improve our quality of life and the quality of society in which us and our children will live in the future. That means that we cannot focus this much on economic growth, simply because to live in a society in which the environment is completely depleted for the mere sake of production, in which people report high levels of stress and high levels of working hours, and in which income is distributed exaggeratedly unequally, and above all, unfairly, means living in no society at all. That doesn't mean, however, that GDP is useless, Because if I told all of you right now that there were a car distributing free money outside of this venue, you would all literally stand up and escape in a few seconds. So money matters, yes it does. However, it matters only insofar as it contributes to our well-being and quality of life. Now, before concluding, let me ask you to close your eyes. I want all of you to close your eyes, just for a few seconds. Close your eyes. Close your eyes and think of 3 things you would like your children and friends to accomplish in their life. So, you can open your eyes now. How many of you, raise your hands, how many of you thought things like a good health, friends, love, family, satisfying job? Raise your hands. Okay, most of you I would say. So, if you thought things like health, a satisfying job, lots of friends and a partner that makes them happy, then you have to explain to me, all of you that raise your hands, why instead of dealing with these things, we judge the success of our society only on the basis of GDP growth. Thank you.